Welcome to another Artis Opus tutorial. Today it's time for the green skins. We have the Hobgrots from the Dominion set. I have done all of these in a super fast way. Plenty of dry brushing, plenty of washes. We've got kind of an evil mustardy variant, which I think is my favorite. And then a kind of like a fleshy cave dwellery orange. These have been done extremely fast. They look really good in real life actually, and I think the moment you times them by 30, they're gonna look amazing, and there's a likelihood you would run 30 of these, so it pays to have them done quickly. Anyway, plenty of tips and tricks coming up. Let's jump in. We have our guy who's been base coated with moot green. I've airbrushed, but if you don't have an airbrush, just prime it grey and then coat the entire thing in moot green. If you are base coating with a brush, you won't hit all the other details, which will probably save you a bit of time later, even if it costs you time now, because I'm gonna have to go and base coat all of these quite carefully, which is definitely gonna be the part of the piece that takes the longest. We're gonna be rocking on with a very simple step here. You can put in some medium if you like. I'll just use a dot though. We're gonna be hitting them up with Coelie green shade all over. Make sure it doesn't pull. It's a dark shaded wash on a very light base coat. So yeah. Make sure you don't get any nasty pulling going on. So that is a 1:3 medium to Coelia ratio. If people are curious, I've also stepped down to a fairly old and battered, but still a size 1. So it may come as a shock to some people. I'm always using the largest brush I can. These guys are little, so I'm going to use a smaller brush. Stage 2. I recommend that if you're worried about this stage, you purchase a red wash. I don't have one, so I'm going to be using Voluptuous Pink, and I'm going to dilute it with some medium. So we're going to go for a healthy portion of medium. 1, 2, 3 big loads of medium. Then probably go for a half load of this. Okay, that actually looks like it should cooperate quite a bit. Yeah, we might even need to add a little bit more to that. So the idea is that with this, on elbows or feet, or any areas where you want them a little bit pinky, I'm going to put down a little wash. I'm also going to use it to bring attention to scars. Now you can do this as the first step, but I think people will find it a bit scary and they will incorrectly think that they are ruining their models and back out of it, because when you do it over a bright green, it does look quite scary. So it's fine to have it in the middle too, but you can also do it as the first step. We can put it in the recesses too. This will work wonders. But of course, if you want a more forgiving version of it, you can just get Caribou Crimson or something like that and use that with a lot less worry. So, or you know, you don't need to mix up your own bespoke version of it. Next step, probably no surprise to anyone here. Move on to the dry brushing. Now, if for some reason you don't like the idea of dry brushing, you could hit these up with another wash, but I think this is the way to get the most out of this type of technique. So we've got a fair bit of contrast on there, really efficient, really fast. We're going to continue using all over techniques that we don't have to be delicate with. And number 1 on that list is, of course, the humble dry brush. So repeating our moot green, working off the excess. It really is important you don't have too much here. And then we are just going for a soft all over dry brush. So don't rush this. Make sure you hit up every single part of the model. Should see it picking on the raised details on that hand and the arm section. And what this will do is anywhere where our previous step, the one that I said is scary, the wash wasn't subtle enough, this will just sort out for us. So you're not going to notice a huge amount changing on it, because we've got a lot of coherency between the fact that this green was our base coat already, and we've only put a semi-transparent layer over it, but this will be laying a foundation. And if you're impatient, you can mix some yellow into this and then just skip the next step if you like. All over though, don't miss out those feet, those scars, the face. Make sure you hit the entire model with this. This will probably take longer than any step so far. That's absolutely fine. It will work wonders. Now, a couple of options here. You can add in more yellow, which will of course make it pop quite a lot. You could even jump to something turbo, like bright yellow green from Procol, which is a lovely color. Or you could add bone, or you could add a bit of both. I'm going to test it out now. I am fairly certain I end up using a bit of both, just to make sure that we don't end up going mega vibrant. If that's your intent though, then just add a little bit of the brightest yellow you've got and absolutely rock on. So it is important that this is not too much of a step from our previous step. It's going to look pretty bright whatever we do. But the moot does need to be the base of it. So probably about 3 parts moot to 1 of each of those. Make sure we're not too dry. There we go. Working wonders. Use your dampening pad to keep it soft. We are doing high quality dry brush in here. People won't even know. And then for the final highlight, of course all this is optional. Gonna have a higher proportion of both of those. Really are going to be very careful. Hobgrot number 2, and as I promised, I'll show you how I base coat without the airbrush. Now the base for this guy, I'm going to mix these two. The reason that I'm using something that isn't a base is because I feel you get a smoother coverage if you mix a layer in with your bases. If you want mega coverage, you could just use Xandri dust, but really this could be kind of any not too strong sandy beigey off color and it really wouldn't matter at all. So here I have a very old small, which I don't mind getting wet. I'm going to take some of Avaland, which has got incredible coverage. And then probably quite a lot more of this because it is a layer, it's not geared towards coverage to the same degree. Make sure they're nice and wet, and we're going to stipple base coat this. So the idea here is you're not building up excess pooling anywhere because you're not layering it, but because it's got a base paint in it, you should get pretty decent coverage. So as long as you primed grey or something like that, 2 coats of this all over, I imagine will really surprise you in terms of just how well it covers. You can hold it by his pointless tassels. Hey, they do have a point. Can mix it with a combination of traditional brush brushing. That is 1 layer of it down. Actually nearly got 1 coat coverage there. I'll quickly let that dry with a hairdryer and then pop back, get the second coat, and we'll be good to rock on. That is actually, I think, definitely faster than the airbrush, even. Super quick. Round 2. Goes without saying, guys, this is for old brushes. So as far as the wash goes for this guy, we're going to be mixing these two. Now the reason for using what we're using here is that these are both fairly soft reddy browns, which I think fits with this spectrum of colors. But we don't want to use a pure contrast because they are very strong. So we've got about 50-50 there. If you wanted to drop in something pink or purple, voluptuous would be a perfect example. You absolutely could. I think it'd add quite an interesting aspect to this, but I'm going to keep it fairly simple for now. At least I will resist, and we are going to put in a little bit of medium as well, just to keep it quite soft. So that is a 3 to 3 to 1 ratio of the contrast to the shade to the medium. And just like the previous one, we're going all over, we're keeping it fast and we're keeping it light. Very important to keep it light. We are not trying to encourage excess pooling. We're going to pick it out. You're much better with this type of effect that we're going for, putting down too little and doing it twice. So you can see that that leg's already looking pretty solid like that. Don't think we've got any excess pooling, but I'll just pull this out in case. And we'll hit up the rest of him as well. We are all dry, looking pretty good. Really nice simple levels of detail on these models. Like their skin and muscular volumes are really positive for washing and dry brushing especially. Take a bit of that Avaland, a bit of the Carrick Stone, going to work it into the brush very carefully here. And this is going to get tested on a foot or somewhere that we could cover with something else if it turns out to not be a good idea. Hopefully you guys can see there, building up those subtle layers again, just like the last time. And rather than going back and getting more paint, going back to the dampening pad. And that's going to give us more moisture that helps us reawaken the paint that we've got on the brush. And it's also going to make sure that we avoid the paint getting grainy to the best degree possible. So it's that, just all over. Take your time on this, do not rush it. Definitely worth taking your time on. The skin's the most important part of these models. And yeah, he should look fantastic once done. So he's actually looking great, particularly around his head. Got a load of detail in there and variants. What I've got is a little bit of Screaming Skull on the palette, and then rather than mixing the Xandri in with the Avaland, I'm going to be using the Screaming Skull. Quite sparingly and fairly carefully. What I'm going to do is start off concentrating this on elbows, knees and other protruding areas that could, conceivably be dry skin. And then depending how it's behaving, we can decide whether we want to take it over the rest of the model. Once it's really softened down, we've barely got any on the brush and we've used a dampening pad. Take it to areas like the head. And the larger volumes like the shoulders, so all sorted. Skin number 2, down. Very different. For our final, we're starting out with something that people may well not be expecting, and that is Jacara Orange. We've done base coating already. You can airbrush it, you can stipple it, you can layer it. I am gonna stipple and smudge this one, I think, after how well it worked on the previous one. For the skin on this guy, we're using Fire Slayer Flesh, and we've diluted it 50-50 with contrast medium. Contrast medium, not Lamium medium, which we've been using with the others, because this is just a pure contrast that we're using here. The base coating on this was not very easy, so what I've actually done is, and it made a big difference, I just mixed a little bit of Xandri dust in for coverage, which is why this guy looks a bit brighter, and also why we can get away with one of the darker contrasts to coat him. So let's go. Exactly the same as the previous ones. Now, due to the amount of contrast medium in this should cover beautifully and in quite a soft fashion. So you still need to be careful, but it should be quite forgiving. And physically, this mix should be quite thick without it also, completely covering over every single aspect of the color that's underneath. So if you ever want a more subtle effect with your contrast paints, just diluting it 50-50 with contrast medium is a really good place to start testing. The medium will also extend the drying time, so if you're in a hot climate, that's a useful secondary property. I dotted this guy's scars and recesses just in the same way as the last guy with the same mix. And then unsurprisingly, we're going to be painting this in the same way that we've approached everything so far in the tutorial. So fairly subtle dry brush, using the dampening pad, concentrating on not building up unwanted texture. You do have to be careful with these base paints. Let them kind of chill out in the brush a little, work them in, have some moisture in there, and that should ensure that you get a really solid end result. So hold in mind that we did have some of the Xandri dust in the base. This is going to be a very subtle effect because it's not way lighter, so this should look really good and quite soft. You can see how little's coming off there, really taking care of this. So this is how you dry brush really smooth. Just got to introduce moisture, be patient, and of course use perfect dry brushes. Doesn't hurt, does it? The right size makes a big difference as well, so the small's perfect for this type of scale. These are quite little minis. There we go, looking great. And I'm just going to rock straight into adding something in there. I think I'm going to add Carrick Stone just to keep this dialed back. So if it is any lighter. A little is okay. And straight to the back. You'll know on the back if what you're doing is a good idea or a bad idea, so go carefully. Amazing, that is a good idea. So carry on with that. If you wanted to pop a little bit further, you could put in some Screaming Skull or, you know, anything like that. I may be tempted to do that in a bit, but I'm just going to go over this guy and cover him with this. Should result in a really, really solid final effect, and I think it's going to look quite natural. Obviously, it's a bit weird to go in an orange, but you know, they're to me these Hobgrots are kobolds. And as far as the lore goes for them, they've been any number of colours in any number of, you know, different fantasy settings. They could be blue, we've got a bright green, they could be off yellow like the one we've done previously. You could go super drab, you know, you could use colours like Castellan and Skarsnik, go a bit more traditional, a bit more Moriori, entirely up to you. What I am going to do while I'm here, after we've got this guy coated, is I'm going to grab a little bit of the Screaming Skull that I mentioned, and I'm going to give his head some attention. Mixing it in the same place on my palette. My brush hasn't been cleaned overly, we've just cleaned as we go, so we've got some of our previous colours in there. Wonderful. I did want to pick skin colours that looked kind of otherworldly and very weird, and you get all types of stuff popping up in nature, but I think it's important to kind of pick a theme and go with it. Let's take a little bit more. Again, same place in the palette. I've got a brush that's got some other stuff worked into it. Dampening pad. And concentrating on his face. See how much detail we can add here. And with this final colour, I'm just going to give it a very light overbrush. And we should be good. He looks great actually, and imagine that skin colour with, you know, splashes of mud on it or blood or something would look absolutely phenomenal. Super pleased with him, so here we are. They're all still amputees, but we will get them sorted and their details done, and they should look amazing. So metallics wise, to keep it friendly for people who may only have access to Games Workshop, grab whatever silver you've got, can be dark, can be light or whatever, and then mix it with either a brown here, or mix it with a black here. More black is darker, less black is lighter, pretty easy. So I'm gonna do one of these in each way, one with a brown, one with a little black, and one with lots of black. I've used Rakar Flesh on the stringy, tassely bits because it covers well, and I think it's a really good tone for washing over. I'm using Baby D here. Okay, so what we're doing at this point is we're just carefully buffing up the details bit by bit, and then from that really dark base that we had, that should just make sure that our edges stay shiny. And of course you can grab a much lighter silver to do a second pass if you wish. If you do grab a brighter silver, no surprises which one I'm taking. I'm just going to take a dot of this because it is potent. Then you should end up with something like that, which I think is beautiful. It's a really subtle way to just make sure that you hit the edges mostly. Keeps it tarnished, very good way to paint. I know these guys aren't evil, but you know, not the good guy's armor. It's also quite uncomplicated visually. I think it's got a really nice effect on it, you know, it's not too over the top. You can put a bit of rust on and just leave it at that. So I'll be doing all the messy dry brushing before I do the ropes, because I want to do the stuff that might spill onto the ropes before I wash them, because the wash should hide whatever we've got going on next. So I think the difference between the one that I painted really dark, you could only just about tell it was metallic, and the one that I used a bit more of the silver in our silver black mix, there's a real big difference here, and actually I far prefer this one. So, you know, it may have looked more weird at first, but now I think it looks amazing. And in small hyper detailed areas, that high contrast is really actually quite forgiving if you're trying to get a good result fast. So note, super dark silver made by mixing a lot of black with a tiny bit of silver. Really good way to let dry brushing do the work for you. Weathering wise, we're going to take it pretty easy here. I'm just going to use a little bit of Scrag Brown. You could use Doomball if you wanted something that was a bit less shiny and aggressive in terms of how bright it is. I'm going to dilute it heavily. And the idea with this is that you pick carefully where it is. So I'll dot it under and around things, maybe around rivets and recesses, that type of thing. And this will stand out far more on the darker one, which, as I covered, I think is a very, very efficient way to handle detail at this size, especially with metallics. And on our slightly different coloured armour, of course, I've grabbed a bit of Sotek green here. You can do a similar thing to simulate verdigris. Always an option to put in something a little bit lighter. Any ivory will do. So on these kind of more rose goldy sections, I think you're a bit safer to just put verdigris in recesses, but it really, really can add a interesting pop to these, and especially with these being a yellow miniature, it's a very cool detail to add. Okay, so I'm going to pop these together before I do the washing of the ropes and the tassels. These pegs are stupid, as are it's really difficult to get things to join up properly, so I'm just going to cut mine right down, and we should be able to dry fit them into place. They turned out really nicely. The greenscale one's pretty cool. That's a great method to have for, I used to use that for snotlings. They don't exist as much these days. Perhaps Games Workshop don't want to call anything snotlings. Although given some of their other names, I doubt that that's the case. These turned out really, really nicely. You might have noticed that I don't cover their ropes. I put down a glossy wash on them. I just didn't shake my paints enough and it looked awful. So, shake your washes before you wash your ropes. Basically would be the learning experience from that. But the thing that I want people to take away from this is, obviously I've not painted 30 of these. I'm not going to paint 30 of these, you'll have to imagine it. But this times, even times 5, these standing next to each other, they would look super solid. And that's something you need to bear in mind when you're doing simple, foot troops often, or the chaff, the opposite end of the elite scale. You don't have to spend a load of time on stuff. If you just do it clean, you do it neat, and you do it consistent, and doing little things like spotting the scars and stuff like that, it really jumps out. Dotting their eyes bright red, that type of thing. Across a unit, that makes a huge difference, and repetition is really important in art, like in general, in fine art and in tabletop art or miniatures or whatever you want to call it. So do it simple, do it right. Do 10 of them, and then if you want to add some more stages, you absolutely can. If you wanted to go in there with pigments and add some rust, or you wanted to put some blood spots on, or you wanted to highlight them, you can absolutely do that once you've done 10 guys and had a look how they look next to each other. But I think a lot of the time, you put them next to each other and they look pretty amazing on the tabletop. So hopefully that was a useful tutorial for people. Do let us know what Dominion content you would like to see next. I may tackle Yndrasta, I can't even pronounce her, but I might tackle her. She has nice wings. I have one on the table next to me. She has lovely wings. They are asking for a dry brush. So I might tackle her next. We'll see. And yeah, if there's any particular Dominion content you would like to see, or specific storm chambers you would like to see from the Stormcast, we do have the still running. We've got the community post where we get people to say what they are. Whichever of the ones that are requested the most, we'll put into a poll, and maybe we'll tackle, the top 3 of the poll or something like that. Anyway, thank you very much for joining in. It's been a brilliant ride so far with Dominion. I'm going to be really sick of these models soon, which is amazing because I really, really like them. But I'm looking forward to a change. I want to paint more vampires, or a tank, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe I need to just do something completely different. Maybe some Star Wars is on the horizon. Who knows? Anyway, let us know whatever you would like to see next. Doesn't have to be from Dominion. Please encourage me to paint more large Star Wars tanks. I really enjoy it. That's it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Do go to Artis Opus's web store. Will be linked down below to check out Series D. They are the best dry brushes available for this type of stuff. I worked on them for years. They are incredible, and they help you achieve pretty good results incredibly fast. So thank you very much for tuning in. I will catch you in the next video.